And welcome, friends, to The Bright Side. I am Pharmacist Ben. 844-236-6010 is our number. If you have questions, comments, success stories, if you just want to contribute to the conversation, 844-236-6010. If you have questions about the longevity products or longevity business, 844-236-6010 is our number. And we love hearing from you. 844-236-6010. If you want to purchase longevity products, go to brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com. You can purchase longevity products off the website. You can also click on the Join the Team link to start yourself a home-based business and help spread the word about the power and importance of a good nutritional supplement program. You can call 866-735-2470 or click on the Join the Team link at brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com. And make sure you take a look at our Truth Skin Health products at truthtreatments.com and check out our over 500, now approaching 600 5-star reviews. On all our Truth Treatments, you can get Truth Treatments at truthtreatments.com, truthtreatments.com. And if you're out there and you've used our Truth Treatments, love to hear what you think about our various products. If you want to chime in, I'll tell you what, if you chime in about, if you have a good experience with our Truth Treatments, or even a bad experience for that matter, with our Truth Treatment products, call me now at 844-236-6010, and we'll get you a free Xeno Helio Guard sunblock, which is not quite out ready for sale yet, but it's a really cool product. So anyway, I want to hear what you guys have to say. 844-236-6010. If you've had an experience with my Truth Skin Health products, give us a shout. Let us know what you think, and we'll make it worth your time. All right, we got a really cool guest coming up at the bottom of the hour. This is a guy who invents games. He has a game company, Games for Thinkers. In fact, his website is gamesforthinkers.org. He has math games and he has logic games. And he had a game he just developed that I found unbelievably important. It's called Propaganda. It's called the Propaganda Game. And it's a game for teachers and students as well. It's a game that teaches critical thinking, which, of course, is something we talk about on this program all the time. The importance of critical thinking. We have a critical thinking crisis that's costing us our lives. It's costing us our freedoms. It's costing us our health. It's costing us our quality of life. It's a lack of critical thinking that allows us to buy into propaganda. Propagate, forward. Propaganda is actually a religious term. It means to propagate the faith. But it's been co-opted by businesses and by governments and by people who understand how the mind works better than we do. And if you take the definition of propaganda, which is information that is directed at making us do something, usually of a biased nature, who can deny that we are being immersed in a propaganda message, probably the most powerful and the most impactful propaganda message in the history of the world? We are in the middle of it right now, and it's intense. And without the ability to critically think, we will be led like lemmings to the cliff. Because propaganda is about, the propaganda we're dealing with here is about killing off the individual. That's why we have all this censorship. Censorship is one of the major tools of propaganda, because propaganda has to be as coherent as possible. You can't have different forms of information. There has to be a coherency. So propaganda mandates censorship. And whenever you see censorship, you can rest assured, any censorship, you can rest assured that somebody's trying to tell you something. And you got to be a dummy not to see that somebody's trying to tell us something here. I watch the news every day, but I watch the news with the mindset of, what are they trying to tell me? Not what they're saying. When you watch the news, you don't want to pay attention to what they're saying, because it usually doesn't even matter. You want to pay attention to the overall message, the global message, the meta message within the little tiny little stories they tell you. The meta message is fear, be afraid. They literally will say this with what's going on today. They'll literally say, be afraid. You have to fear. They say, fear. Watch the news and watch how many times they use the word fear or afraid or scared or some derivative thereof. Message, the overriding propaganda message that we are being saturated in is not in our individual interest, and without the ability to critically think, and that is to discern propaganda, to tease it out, to see where it's there, we are doomed as individuals. We will become the Borg. That's what this is about. It's about unifying everybody. No more differences. No more different races. No more different ideas. No more different religions. No more differences. It's about unifying everything, making everything homogeneous, because when everything's homogeneous, it's easier to control. All right, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but we got Buzz Allen coming up at the bottom of the hour to talk about his game Propaganda. I've been reading a lot about this idea of mitochondria and health. Mitochondria. These days, I hope it's not too intimidating, the word mitochondria. If I said mitochondria 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, people would just probably tune out. I hope you're not tuning out when you hear the word mitochondria. They're so fascinating. And they're getting a lot of attention now as a place where aging begins, as a place where bodily breakdown begins. In fact, there's a mitochondrial theory of aging. I have this book. It's called Cracking the Aging Code, written by Dorian Sagan and Josh Middledorf. Dorian Sagan is Carl Sagan's son. And it's a really cool book. And in it, he talks about what he calls the mitochondrial theory of aging. And it's not just his theory, but he discusses it in the book. In fact, we had Sean Wells on last Friday, and he talked about the mitochondrial theory of aging. And mitochondria, because that's where the energy is produced, that's where food gets broken down into sugar, and sugar goes through the mitochondria, and out comes energy. And that's very, very simplistic, and how it happens is amazing. But when there's defects in that area, scientists now believe that's where aging begins. And of course, that's true, that is associated with aging. But my problem with mitochondrial theory is it's too specific. Sometimes biochemists forget the big picture, and they focus on how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, and they focus on a specific chemical reaction or a specific organelle. And in biochemistry, it's very easy, because biochemistry is like you can go down the rabbit hole and keep going. You can keep going until you go into the atom, and then into the electron, and then into nothingness. So you can go pretty far down the rabbit hole, and it gets a little too deep when you start getting into specific suborganelles. The cell is really where you want to be. When you start getting subcellular, you're starting to monkey around where you really, at an area that's too refined and too small and too subject to volatility to really be effective. You want to be at the cell. The cell is really the nexus of health, and all the stuff that you hear about focusing with the mitochondria and mitochondrial supplements, and it's where NAD comes in. You probably heard of NAD and NADH, and Sean actually mentioned NAD. And the biochemists who love the mitochondrial theory, they love NAD, because NAD is in the mitochondria. If you think of the mitochondria as a black box where sugar goes in and energy comes out and magic happens in the black box, one of the things that is involved with that magic, in the black box, is NAD. But you're starting to get really, really too specific at that point. But if you work at the cell, and I'll tell you how you do that when we come back from our break, you have much more power, because there's some stability there. It's not as volatile. I'll tell you what I mean when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll be back after this. All right, we're back on The Bright Side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. The line's open, and we'll get your calls in just a sec here. 844-236-6010. 844-236-6010. We've got Buzz Allen coming up at the bottom of the hour talking about his game, Propaganda, the game. We're going to talk about propaganda, and we'll talk about the game at the bottom of the hour, and we'll get your calls this segment. Let's see here. The fourfold square of health. That's how you handle the cell, folks. Everything we talk about in the way of health on this program is about the cell. All disease is cell disease. Dealing with the cell is all you got to know. Not the subcellular stuff. Don't worry about that. There's so much, unless you want to just be blown away. Now, if you want to be blown away, ponder on the subcellular, the subcellular universe, all the stuff that's going on inside a cell. That's amazing. And I think when we look at the cell as a circle, like we saw it, like we imagine it in biology school, or biology in high school, in our biology text, like a circle with stuff inside, that doesn't do the cell any, the majesty, the incredibleness of a cell any service. It kind of simplifies things. It's not simple. It's incredibly complicated. All the stuff that's going on simultaneously in this little blob. It's not a circle. It's a blob. It's like a little blob of jelly. Protoplasm. It's beyond belief. You can't even imagine what it is, even with an electron microscope and all the computer animation stuff that they have. It still can't even begin to touch the complexity and the tightly regulated nature of what's happening inside a cell. Nonetheless, by working with the fourfold square of health, nutriate, respirate, move, and rest, You can give the cell what it needs from a physical perspective. Now, the psychology should not be marginalized, but from a physical perspective, nutrient, food, less food, better food, and nutrition. Respirate, making sure you're inhaling and exhaling, moving the body to the point preferably where it's uncomfortable, and then lots and lots and lots of long, luscious rest. That's how you handle the mitochondria. And in anything above and beyond just being blown away by the mitochondria and being in awe of the mitochondria, if you start to say, oh, I'm going to start to manipulate the mitochondria, I think that's getting to be, that's when you start to play at a realm that really you have no business playing at. It's too complex and it's too volatile. There's too much happening there. All right, I'll get your calls in just a sec, but I want to read this real quick. I just read this a minute ago, just came off of one of my favorite websites, medicalexpress.com. UK overestimates coronavirus death toll. No kidding. You think it's just the UK that's overestimating coronavirus death toll? What's the point of telling us how many people died when we know good and well that we don't know how many people died of this coronavirus? You go on the CDC website, it lumps pneumonia and influenza and coronavirus all together because they're all basically the same thing. You can't attribute a death to COVID. On the other hand, or to coronavirus. On the other hand, they're attributing people fall out of an airplane and have the virus. They're attributing it to that. So statistics, you can't pay attention to the statistics when you hear them repeated over and over and over again, drummed into your head. 156,000, 1 per 80 seconds, 4.5 million, 5 million, blah, 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 blah. You know they're trying to tell you something. They're propagating an idea at your expense, at our expense as individuals. All right, we'll talk to Buzz Allen, bottom of the hour. This just came out today, and you can find it on medicalexpress.com. Okay, let's go to the phones, 844-236-6010. And there's our friend Bob. Hey, Bob, I hope you got a good connection here.
Hey, is it better?
Yes, it's way better. What's going on, my man?
Okay. Well, yesterday we got off on a philosophical tangent, and I have two questions I'd rather ask you.
Okay.
My questions are, first
Don't get me started on philosophy then.
Exactly. First one's on DNA. And my question is, knowing that viruses distort our DNA anywhere from 20 to 50%, roughly.
Say that again so everybody can hear it.
Okay. It's my understanding, or the premise that viruses distort DNA by 20
Don't distort. That's true and it's not true. They don't distort. They become part of our genetics. They're almost like a mechanism for advancing the genome, for evolution. They actually enter into our genetics and stay there permanently to the point where anywhere from 30 to 40 to 50% of your genetics and our genetics are viral in nature. They came from viruses. And it usually happens when a system is under stress. And last week we read how 5G waves can create that kind of stress that will create these kind of viral entities, these little pieces of information. And no one knows whether the pieces of information come from the outside in or the inside out or both.
Yeah, except that article also expressed the fact that it exposes people to, additional potential diseases.
In the short term, yeah. In the short term, that happens. And that's a very interesting point you make. And this is where it doesn't affect everybody, though, in the short term. It affects the weak in the short term. Do you follow me?
Okay.
It affects those it's opportunistic. Viruses are opportunistic, meaning they wait for an opportunity. This is why when you have shingles, you don't get shingles. You don't have it all the time. You have it when you're under duress or cold sores. People have cold sores when they're under duress. Yes, go ahead.
Right. Then we pass that DNA on to our offspring. And my question is, considering poor diets and a constant barrage of electromagnetic energy on future generations, does that then predispose them to disease?
Well, that's a great question.
At an earlier age,
That's a great question. Let me answer that the way I answer. Yes, potentially, but I prefer to see it as an opportunity for us to be forced to take care of ourselves, to not smoke, to exercise, to not let our minds run crazy, to not let our minds take us into a sympathetic mode of functioning. I mean, to actually hack into our bodies. This is an opportunity. Yes, your answer to answer your question is yes. That is what it means. But also no, in the sense that we can do something about it. You follow me? we can start to understand our bodies. I was reading this Facebook post today. This lady, she's 90 years old, and she's got all these red spots all over her body. You've probably seen this before in older folks. Their body's breaking down. She's in her 90s. Her body's breaking down, and she's putting alcohol on it. She's putting colloidal silver on it. She's putting Neosporin on it. She wrote to Facebook, and somebody says it's ringworm. Another person says put vanilla on it. This is the kind of silliness we have about our bodies, the lack of understanding of how our bodies work and how they're put together. And that makes us susceptible to fear because we live in a body. We're stuck in it. So what I say is understand the body. That's what we should be understanding. And you don't have to understand the mitochondria either, although that is impressive and it'd be nice to meditate on that and to think about it. But we just have to understand the basics of how to run it. You know what I'm saying? Right. How to nutriate it, how to oxygenate it, how to detoxify. Right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, considering though that the potential there that people are still going to be on poor diets in the future, then a copy of a copy of a copy, offspring after offspring, potentially
well, there's also
ages you can develop diseases.
Yeah, that's true, but there's also adaptation. You know, that's where immunity comes in. The body adapts. Okay. You know, and that's the cool thing about evolution. Eventually it adapts, but it may take some generations. And in the meantime, there are going to be people who are susceptible to certain things, and that's where learning to run your body becomes important. Bob, most people don't even know where their pancreas is or what it does. How are you going to run your blood sugar system without understanding the pancreas? And you don't have to understand a lot about it, but just the basics.
I got a second question. Here it is. Real simple.
Yes.
Real simple.
Yeah. Okay.
Does hyperthyroidism, is that synonymous with hypermetabolism?
Yes. Yes. I wouldn't say synonymous. I would say cause of it, but they're synonymous.
Correlation?
Yeah. No, it could be causation. That's a bigger question than we have in a second to talk about. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Call me back tomorrow. All right, we got Buzz Allen coming up at the bottom of the hour. Okay, we are back on the bright side. I'm Pharmacist Ben, and thank you for joining us. We're on the air Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Pacific, 10 to 11 Central, 24/7 on the archive pages at brightsideben.com, also benfuchsarchives.com. We also have a Facebook page, The Bright Side with Pharmacist Ben, and you can find all our Truth Skin Health products, never any preservatives, fragrances, fillers, waxes, emulsifiers, water, oil, vegetable oil, silicone, nothing your skin doesn't need or doesn't want in any of our Truth Skin Health products. All formulated in my compounding pharmacy for healing, now available for beauty. Healing is beauty, and that's what you'll find in all our Truth Skin Health products. Healing equals beauty. TruthTreatments.com, TruthTreatments.com. All right, I am super stoked to have our guest on. Buzz Allen is the founder, I guess, of GamesForThinkers.org, and he's also got a really cool game called Propaganda. And we talk about propaganda a lot on this program. We talk about critical thinking a lot on this program. And when I read Buzz's promotional material, I was like, this guy's got to get on the bright side. We need to talk to Buzz. Please welcome to the bright side, Buzz Allen. Hey, Buzz.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. When I know I told you this already, but as soon as I saw that blurb of yours, I was like, this guy's got to come on the bright side because that's a very, very important topic. We do a health program here where we talk about the importance of physical strategy, supplementation, exercise, etc., for being healthy. But the mind trumps the body in a lot of ways, and you can do you can control the body in a lot of ways by controlling the mind. And to me, propaganda is about other people controlling your mind. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. How we define propaganda is basically manipulative techniques that people use to influence or persuade others, either to accept an idea or a product or whatever. And it's much more widespread than just the traditional areas of advertising and politics that we usually think of it in. In fact, any interaction that goes on between people where they're trying to influence one another, very often these techniques will be used if they don't have a reasonable argument to offer otherwise.
Well, here,
and they work.
Hang on to that point, because you just said something very interesting. You said if they don't have a reasonable argument or perspective otherwise, and I think that's where critical thinking comes in. And to me, propaganda it's like if a tree falls down in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it really make a sound, right? If propaganda is out there, but there's not a non-critical thinker to receive it, it doesn't make a sound. It doesn't work. There has to be a non-critical thinking receiver, correct?
Yes, and it's very hard to avoid these days. I mean, we're bombarded with information like never before, and it's not Walter Cronkite presenting the vetted news. It's just any kinds of opinions, well-meaning or nefarious, and it's impossible to fact-check everything, and one responds emotionally, regardless, almost immediately. So what this game does is teaches more than 55 different techniques. This is dealing with how does propaganda work. And when you get very adept at recognizing technique, if somebody tries a bandwagon appeal on you like, hey, try this drug, it's really cool, everybody's doing it, if you see that that's a bandwagon appeal, then that's one step removed where you can say, well, that's not a reasonable reason for doing it.
You
just
call it
everyone else is.
You call it bandwagon appeal. That's the social credibility or the social cred thing where you get social validation, I think they call it. Is that what you mean?
Right, because, you should do something just because everyone or a large number of people are doing it.
That's not a good enough reason, is it?
Enormous amount of peer pressure for all the things we don't want kids to do, or even as adults. It goes under those sorts of exploitive techniques. But there's also techniques that, manipulate language, and the most nefarious types are the ones we actually internalize, where we actually are lying to ourselves, thinking that there's only two choices in what is otherwise a complex and nuanced situation, or even not even being able to conceive that we could accomplish something, so we don't try.
So tell me about, in your opinion, what do you think about the most fundamental source of propaganda, the most powerful source of propaganda, the most hidden source of propaganda, which is our parents and how we were parented?
Absolutely. Yes. One of the techniques, for example, in exploit, because we're divided into different sections in the game. And an exploitation technique is called an appeal to practical consequences. And now, telling somebody about the practical consequences of something, that's not inherently manipulative. But when the consequences are either imaginary or arbitrary or exaggerated.
There's an agenda.
Yeah, when there's an agenda, then it is. And a good example off our website was, a parent walks into a room, there's toys all over the floor, little girl's looking at her phone, parent says, clean up these toys this instant or I'm going to take them away and you won't have them. Now, every parent's done that. The real reason for not leaving her toys all over is it's inconsiderate for other people that might use the room. They could get broken or somebody could get injured. Now, those are the real reasons that if she understood the rationale, perhaps she would see the perspective of others. But when the parent comes down with this hard, do this or else, basically a threat and an ultimatum, that's a manipulative technique, and people will not respond well to it. They may react, but the most severe one I saw recently was if you try to get amnesty in our country, we'll separate you from your children and lock them up in cages. And just because it actually gets done doesn't mean it's not manipulative. So
was it information? Go ahead.
I've had parents say to me, well, no, if you follow through and really take the toys away, then it's not manipulation. No, it's even more manipulative if you do it.
Hang on, though. That's an interesting distinction. Is propaganda just the information, or is it the information plus the consequences?
I would think propaganda would be more the techniques and information one uses to try to affect active actions, but then actions follow from it.
Right. So when I see propaganda, when I see the word, I think of propagating an agenda. Like somebody has a certain agenda.
Exactly.
So they're not interested in you. So usually when we share information, when we're healthfully share information, it's a win-win, right? It's for everybody.
Right.
That's a healthy way to share information. But propaganda is an unhealthy way because it's asymmetrical. It's like I'm trying to get you to, right? And so how can we deal with that? It's like you say, have you heard of deep fakes, by the way? Have you heard of this thing called deep fakes? Let me tell you what deep fakes are. Okay, I want you to sit with this one for a second, okay? Because this is very important when it comes to propaganda. A deep fake is computer imagery that now looks exactly like something really happened. You can't tell the difference. And they have deep audio fakes too, where they have voices of Obama or Trump or anybody else saying something that are completely digital, completely synthetic, and you can't tell the difference. So how do you deal with that in a world of agendas and propagandas or propagandas? How do you deal with something like deep fakes? And how, I mean, the information war is getting so sophisticated that the information purveyors, the propaganda presenters, have these tools that are so good that you can't even perceive the difference between real and unreal. Okay? How do you deal with a world like that as a critical thinker?
Well, what we've done is to try to at least familiarize people to understand what constitutes a manipulative practice and what is a reasonable argument, and whatever generated that. And usually people that have an agenda are resorting to manipulative practices because it's easier, and everyone responds to it.
And you teach people to detect that. To tease that out.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
We've got to take a break, Buzz, but I want to talk about that when we come back. Like what people can do to tease that out, manipulative intent, malintent, if you will. All right, we're talking to Buzz Allen. His games propaganda, his website, gamesforthinkers.org. We'll be back on the bright side with more Buzz Allen and Propaganda the Game right after this. Okay, we are back on the bright side. We're talking to Buzz Allen, Propaganda the Game. So, how do you discern propaganda? How do you tell when propaganda is in your face? Are there clues? Are there things you can look for?
Well, once you become familiar with the techniques, that we found that's the best way, and that's what our website propagandagame.org does. Is anyone can go on and actually review real life examples. And when we created the new version of it, we allow people to post their own examples with pictures or even video or memes, and it allows you to see what other authors think is a particular example, and you can have your own opinions as well, because there's a lot of real-life situations that involve multiple techniques. And in the game, when people actually play, an example is presented, and everyone votes for what they think is the dominant technique being used. But that's an opinion, and people can feel differently, because very often when real-life examples are a barrage of different things all done at once, and that's how they're powerful and effective for the people doing it.
Give us an example of how you can figure out if there's an element of propaganda in what's going on in the world today.
Well, you'd want to take a specific example of something somebody said, and like that example with the toys. I'll get one close to home that involves, say, teenagers. If you've got a teenage Romeo pressuring his girlfriend to have sex, and he might say something like, "Oh, you need to do this. Everybody's doing it. We should start." And that's a bandwagon appeal. And then he could also say, "Well, if you really love me, you'll do this, and if you don't, it means you don't love me." That's a technique called drawing the line, where you make it sound like there's only two possibilities. You're either part of the problem or part of the solution for a situation that is more nuanced than that. And finally, they could, go ahead.
This sounds like you can use it in copywriting and sales.
Absolutely, it's all over the place in advertising. But wait, there's more.
Okay, so you got the binary thing, and you got the bandwagon appeal. I love the way you say that.
And there's 55 different techniques.
Oh,
and
there
it takes a while looking at examples. Just reading the definition doesn't really get you to the point where you see it happening on the fly. It really helps to look at a lot of examples, and so that's what our website does. People can just review more than 3,000 different examples. They can submit their own. We've made it so that teachers who want to teach this as a class in school can assign kids submitting 2 or 3 examples as homework assignments, and then she can pick the best ones and let them play in class, where they get in groups and vote on which technique they think an example uses and discuss it.
So listen. I'm going to just say something that I notice here, okay? So propaganda we define as when they're trying to get you to do something, right? But there's a second half to that equation or that definition that we're kind of glossing over, okay? You know what that is? It's that they're trying to get you to do something that you wouldn't do otherwise.
Right.
That you wouldn't do on your own, that you intuitively know, based on all the things that you could do, this is on the list of things I'm not going to do. Right? I'm not going to buy this. I'm not going to participate here. I'm not going to believe this. You know what I'm saying? So that's where the manipulation.
That wouldn't happen. A change in attitudes or behavior.
But no, a change that wouldn't happen anyway, that you wouldn't do on your own. That's the problem with propaganda. It's using use the word nefarious. That's a great word. It's using nefarious, underhanded subterfuge to get you to do things. And some of the techniques that you talk about, appeal to pity, quotations out of context, casual oversimplification. These are not nice things to do to your fellow man, right?
Well, exactly, and some people have said, well, you're going to train our kids to be propagandists, and the truth is, once people don't inherently want to manipulate others unless they're some kind of monster, and once they understand that what that involves, you don't do it. And it really does change the nature of interactions, and the interpersonal relationships is there's more of that going on in every interpersonal relationship, whether parent and child or student teacher, spouses, everywhere. And
what does that say about us? What does that say about us?
People do it because it's a shortcut. If they want you to change your behavior, your attitude, it's a shortcut to use a manipulative technique rather than to actually, work hard to find a really reasonable way, an argument and discussion.
Right.
They're visceral. I mean, manipulative techniques. That's why they use them. Machiavelli.
Mm-hmm. So if you see a quotation, somebody's quoting something out of context. If you see oversimplification, if somebody's trying to talk to you or persuade you to do something using these techniques, slogans are a great one. Politics uses slogans all the time. Repetition, another great one. Politics uses repetition all the time. If you see people using these techniques rather than saying, you know what, this car is better than your car. This car is going to save you a lot of money. You're going to be able to be safer in this car. Come up with a rational reason why they should buy the car. You should be on your toes for being manipulated. Yeah,
that's absolutely the case. And practice helps. And that's all we're trying to do is raise the level of awareness and discourse.
Yeah.
People are still going to disagree. It was interesting when we were looking for examples. I would pick a topic that was a controversial issue, whether gun control or abortion. And when you look at even the memes on that have been posted on Facebook on both sides, they're both using the same techniques, just from a different perspective. So this is not uniquely a left wing or a right wing thing at all.
Right.
They do it on both sides, and if you're concerned about it, and most people are concerned about the opposition using propaganda. They don't mind it so much from the people they agree with.
That's a good point. So here's the thing. It's very easy when you start to understand how much we're propagandized, how much all the information we get has an agenda behind it, and usually an agenda of based on something that we don't want to do. How do you get around just giving up and just saying, I'm not going to pay attention to anybody. I'm not going to listen to anybody. I'm not going to listen to anything.
Well, do you really have the option of totally withdrawing from life and all interaction? I mean, even if you adopt that attitude and go live in a cave, we're at a point in the world where the interconnectedness of the world is inescapable. Mm-hmm. And I think the best thing you can do is inoculate yourself and your kids and your friends so that they at least understand how they're being manipulated. Then you have a choice. When you see the mechanics of how something's being done to you, you have a choice of how you want to resist that.
Mm-hmm.
And
isn't that ironic?
Isn't
it ironic how we're dealing with a viral infection, like a medical viral infection, but we're also dealing with mind viral infections? You said inoculate. Right? I mean, we have to inoculate ourselves against something that has the same kind of viral malevolence that the supposed virus, like a COVID virus would have.
Well, we certainly know from the placebo and nocebo effects that your attitude towards whether you're sick or well or going to get sick or get well are more effective than most drugs are either way.
Yeah, drugs work by the same mechanism. The chemistry of a placebo is the same as the chemistry of a drug. The same mechanism.
Sure.
It's you doing it. Sure. It's your immune system doing it.
Yeah. So attitudes are critical, and the attitude that you take towards life and the conclusions you come to based on the input you get are absolutely critical for your self-image, for your choices that you make in life, and the consequences are real. And so it's very important.
That's powerful stuff. We have, through the power of our attitude, we have so much power through the power of our attitude. Something as simple as that. It seems almost simple. It's simple, but it's not simplistic. It's a very powerful place to come from. And this is great work that you're doing, by the way. Real quick, how'd you get into? We got about a minute here. How'd you get into games?
It's an accident of birth. My father and my uncle were pioneers in America. My dad had developed a Wolfenproof, the game of modern logic and equations, in the 60s, and he and my uncle were spreading that all around the country in schools. My uncle Bob Allen's the one that developed the propaganda game with Lauren Green, the actor from Bonanza, and we still sell the board game that was developed in the 60s. But the online version at propagandagame.org allows everybody to participate much more in creating real-life examples and posting them and interacting with other people. And it's
and you can buy it online? Is it like a hard game or a digital game?
You can buy the game online at gamesforthinkers.org, but you can play the online version for free at propagandagame.org.
Oh, that's awesome. Propagandagame.org and what was that? Gamesforlearning.com, did you say?
Gamesforthinking.org, yeah.
Games for Thinking, F-O-R.
Games for Thinkers, I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. Gamesforthinkers.org. All right, hey, did you ever hear the game theory of life? Do we have buzz?
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
I've heard of it.
We're out of time. I'd love to talk about it, but maybe we'll have you back on. Would you come back on?
Sure.
Awesome, Buzz. Good to talk to you. Have a great day, buddy. The Propaganda Game. That's awesome. Buzz Allen, the Propaganda Game. I just Googled the Propaganda Game, and you can get gamesforthinkers.org. You can get all his game stuff. That's it for the Bright Side. Thanks for listening, friends. Have a wonderful, beautiful, awesome, spectacular day. We'll talk to you all later. Bye for now.